Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. My name is Gavin Fish, and this is my channel. Thank you very much for joining me. If you are new to my channel, which is probably a lot of you because my channel has grown quite a bit over the last couple of weeks, mostly because of my coverage of the case of the homicide of Gabby Petito and the manhunt of her fiance, Brian Laundrie. Now, I have decided that in this video, I'm going to pivot just a little bit over to a different case, mostly because, one, I don't think that there's very much new to report on the Brian Laundrie manhunt and the Gabby Petito case. I don't want to just be another talking head about the case in order to get traffic that I can monetize. I'm just not about that. When there is something new, I definitely will cover that. But there has been kind of a earthquake today on another case that I'm covering, and that is the case of 20-year-old Amanda Wienckowski. Now, Amanda, just for those of you who are new to this case, she was last seen on December 5th, 2008, walking into the house of this man here. His name is Antoine Garner. She was reported missing on December 7th, 2008, and on the 9th of the following January, so the 9th of January 2009, her frozen solid body, naked and upside down, was found stuffed into a garbage can that was, I guess, hidden, though hidden isn't a very good word. It was placed in an alcove of this church. It's called New Covenant Church of Christ, which is directly across the street from Antoine Garner. Now, I have covered this case in depth on the channel. I think we've got 11 episodes on this so far, so I will put a link below. But if you just in case you want to see everything that I've done, but I just kind of wanted to give you, I guess, the skinny on this case, just in a nutshell, what has gone on in this case. Now, just so you know, once Amanda was taken back to the Erie County Medical Examiner's office, she was removed from this garbage can. I'm going to show you some actual photos, but I've blurred out Amanda's body, mostly because I want to protect her mom, who I'm working on this with. They removed her from the garbage can, and then they thawed her overnight, which is not something that they should have done. They should have brought her up to temperature over a long period of time. And then they performed an autopsy. Now, in that autopsy, Dr. Diane Vertis, who you just saw in that picture, called her cause and manner of death as an accidental acute opiate intoxication. You can see it right here, right? The manner of death was an accident, and cause of death was acute opiate intoxication. Now, if we actually go over to the death certificate, since we've talked about documentation quite a lot on this channel, this is the amended death certificate that Dr. Vertis signed, calling Amanda's death an accident and an acute opiate intoxication. Now, why would she do that when there was evidence that Amanda was not an overdose victim? Now, I will just go ahead and say that Amanda was addicted to heroin, and there were track marks on her body, and they were noted in the autopsy report. But what was not noted in the autopsy report were oval-shaped bruising on Amanda's neck, including internal injuries. There was even cartilage breaking in there. There was bruising on her arms. And let me see if I can pull this up here real quick. There was a strange wound on Amanda's face. What we're looking at here is down here. This is Amanda's chin. Her mouth is right here. This is her right jawline. And again, I go into great depth of this on the channel. You can check this out, but I wanted to point these out. See these two kind of diamond-shaped wounds? There are actually 3 of them in other photos. This is a diamond-shaped wound right here. And then underneath it, there is a bruise on her jaw with little protrusions that don't look like organic shapes. They're straight lines. And then there are 3 little dots. I think what we're looking at here is evidence that Amanda was hit with a handheld stun gun, and then the contacts broke skin on one side of it and arced up her face. So those were just noted in the autopsy as abrasions on her jawline. They didn't actually take a look to see what was going on here. So what happened was Amanda's mom did not accept the finding of an accidental overdose for very obvious reasons. And so she hired a second pathologist. Her name was Dr. Silvia Comparini, to do a second autopsy. Let me show you my screen here real quick. And in the second autopsy, she went to great lengths to investigate the case and investigate the evidence on Amanda's body. They had to sue Erie County in order to be able to perform the second autopsy. And then when they did the autopsy, they found that Erie County had withheld organs and other tissues. So they had to sue again to get access to those tissues. Anyway, in her 78-page report, Dr. Comparini determined that Amanda's manner of death was homicide. The cause of death was manual strangulation associated with blunt force injuries of the face, tongue, external genitalia, upper and lower extremities, followed by improper disposal of a human being along with deliberate indifference. Now, take a look at this. This is 78 pages of investigation report. When we go over and see the investigation that Dr. Verdes did, it's 6 pages long, and this is suspicious as all get out, guys. There literally every ME, every pathologist that worked in the medical examiner's office signed this report as if to try to make it bulletproof, right? So that's kind of the background. Now, getting to the earthquake that happened today, and I'm going to take a little bit of a long way around on this. During my investigation of Amanda's case, now I had 1,800 pages to go through. I had over 400 photos to go through. I had witness statements from all over the place, hours and hours and hours of recording of witnesses. And it's going to sound like I did all this. I actually work with a team that is doing this, including my friend Rick Tracewell over at Solve Crimes TV. I'll put a link to his channel below as well. Most of them just don't want to be named, and so I'm just going to call it my report for now, or my investigation for now. But during my investigation, I was looking at the toxicology report from the Erie County Medical Examiner's Office, and I found an anomaly. Well, I found something that I didn't understand. And so I'm going to zoom in up right here. It is this line. 6-monoacetylmorphine. Now, Amanda was tested for morphine and codeine in her body. Morphine is a metabolite of heroin, which is the drug that Amanda was addicted to. Codeine is a metabolite of nothing. Morphine is a metabolite of it. And they were found positive in her body, but for some reason, next to them was this 6-monoacetylmorphine. I didn't know what that was, and so I did a little bit of research, and I'm going to show you a clip from one of my previous episodes on this case so that you can see what I found out about what 6-monoacetylmorphine is. Here you go. We're going to talk chemistry here for a minute, and we're going to keep it simple because that's the level at which I understand it. But specifically, I want to talk about what happens to heroin when it gets into the human body. In Amanda's case, she injected it directly into the bloodstream. Heroin is almost the exact same thing as morphine. The difference is that there are 2 acetyl groups in heroin molecules that aren't in morphine. These groups work to increase the half-life of the molecule, making heroin's effects last longer than morphine. Now, when heroin enters the body, one of the acetyl groups gets hydrolyzed spontaneously. No metabolism has taken place in the way that most of us think of it. What I mean is no enzymes make this happen. Basically, it just gets wet, and that converts the heroin molecule into what's called a monoacetylmorphine. Specifically, it's either 6-monoacetylmorphine or 3 monoacetylmorphine, depending on which acetyl group gets hydrolyzed. Next, enzymes in the blood, liver, and brain catalyze that second acetyl group, and the 6 or 3 monoacetylmorphine is then converted into morphine. Morphine then binds to the opioid receptors in the brain, which triggers the release of dopamine. And that makes the user feel an intense rush of euphoria, among other sensations. Many people don't know this, but the human body actually produces morphine itself, but at very low levels. When high levels of morphine are introduced to the body, there's a detection system that knows there's too much morphine in it. So it starts toward getting rid of the drug by flushing it out through the urinary system. And this is why urine drug tests are commonly used by opioid recovery clinics as a way to know if a patient has been using heroin. They look for 2 things in the urine. You guessed it, morphine and monoacetylmorphine. Usually toxicology labs test for 6 monoacetylmorphine. Now, there are a lot of variables that go into the metabolism of heroin, but in general, morphine is flushed out of the system through the urinary tract in about 7 days. 6 monoacetylmorphine, however, is completely flushed out of the system in about 24 hours. So when heroin recovery clinics test a patient's urine and they find 6 monoacetylmorphine in that urine, they know that their patient has taken heroin sometime in the previous 24 hours. Okay, so that is a clip from one of my past episodes on 6 monoacetylmorphine. Okay, so this 6 monoacetylmorphine showing as negative is proof that Amanda did not have heroin in her body within the previous 24 hours of her dying. And if you are asking the question, well, if she was missing for 35 days, is it possible that it flushed out in the meantime? The answer to that question, according to toxicologists and pathologists that I've talked to, is no, especially considering it would have stayed suspended in the urine, especially considering that Amanda was frozen solid. There are studies that show that in a frozen state, 6-MAM remains viable for up to 18 years. Okay, so this proves that Amanda did not die of a heroin overdose. And so that caused us to talk to a toxicologist. His name is Dr. Ted Simon. Let me pull up his, and he did a very good report for us and ultimately gave the opinion that based on the low concentrations of codeine and morphine reported in the samples of blood and liver from Ms. Wienkowski, in comparison to the concentrations observed in prior poisonings from these drugs, attributing the cause of her death to acute opiate intoxication is highly unlikely and not supported by the body of scientific evidence. Okay, so we're getting close to the end of my preface here. What we did with this information is we said, hey, the medical examiner's office needs to know this. And so we wrote a letter, or Amanda's mom wrote a letter saying, I want you to look at this evidence and I want you to take it into consideration and change Amanda's cause of death from accident to homicide as found by Dr. Comparini in light of the new evidence that there was no way for her to have overdosed the way Dr. Verdes said, the pathologist from Erie County Medical Examiner's Office. What they did with that, with our letter and our demand to change, including all the evidence that we included in that letter, in that packet, they just ignored us. They did nothing. They said nothing. They didn't do anything. And so that made it so that we had to do what is called an Article 78. It's a civil lawsuit in the state of New York where basically we are asking a judge to force the Erie County Medical Examiner's Office to take this into consideration, and we ask them to change the cause of death from accidental to homicide, or at the very least as undetermined. Remember, when we look at manners of death, there are really only 5 options, right? Natural cause, accident, homicide, suicide, or undetermined. The pending investigation check mark goes there, prior to having an official cause of death found. So that's what we are demanding in our Article 78. And basically what happened, or what we found out today, is that Erie County's county attorney, or assistant county attorney, has filed a motion to dismiss. So we've gone 15 minutes, but I wanted to bring you guys up to speed on this. He's filed a motion to dismiss, and it's an interesting idea for a motion. And let me bring you over to my screen here. Okay, so this is the name of the attorney is Jeremy Toth. He is an assistant county attorney. The county attorney is Michael Siragusa, and this first couple pages is the notice of motion to dismiss that he sent to Leslie's attorney, John Ray. Let's actually get into the motion to dismiss here. Okay, I'm going to kind of skip down to this. This is all public record, by the way, guys. I'm not giving you any inside information that you can't get yourself, but I want to read. Well, it's short. Let's just go ahead and read it. It says, the undersigned Jeremy C. Toth, Esquire, an attorney at law duly admitted to practice in the state of New York, is an assistant county attorney to Michael A. Siragusa, Esquire, county attorney, attorney for respondents, County of Erie, and County of Erie Chief Medical Examiner Tara Mahar, and affirms under penalties of perjury the following. The petitioner, that is Amanda's mom, seeks an order from this court compelling the county medical examiner to change the cause of death for the deceased from accident to either homicide or undetermined. The death certificate in question was executed on February 10th, 2010. And it says, see the exhibit. That is an exhibit that I prepared. Okay. Number 2, this affirmation is submitted in support of the respondents. The respondents are Erie County and the Chief Medical Examiner. The respondents' motion to dismiss this petition in its entirety. And number 3 tells why they're making this motion. An Article 78 action must be commenced within 4 months of the determination that is being sought to be reviewed. The 4 months begins when the determination is final and binding. I want you to remember that word, binding, final and binding. See CPLR 217, paragraph 1. In the context of the death certificate, just so you guys can see this better, the statute of limitations begins to run once the death certificate is filed, and it says, see this case, which I've looked at. Here it is obvious that the statute of limitations has long since expired. Number 4, in addition, any attempt to restart that 4-month deadline by writing a letter to respondents asking them to change the death certificate is not supported by the law. If, as petitioner seems to believe, one can write a letter more than 10 years after the death certificate was filed to restart the 4-month statute of limitations, then that deadline would be all but meaningless. In order to challenge the quasi-judicial nature of a death certificate, the Article 78 must be filed promptly within 4 months. There simply is no recourse. And then he gives some case law here. Wherefore, it is respectfully requested that the petition be dismissed in its entirety with costs, and for such other and further relief as may be deemed just and necessary. Okay, I want to come up to this word. I was talking with Leslie a little bit earlier today. This is some good lawyering here. This is a good trick and a pretty good argument on its face, especially considering the case law that he referenced. However, it's a crappy argument. I mean, it's a good try, but it's a crappy argument. First off, we did not challenge the finding of the cause and manner of death just 10 years after the fact. That just didn't happen, okay? What we did was, what Leslie did is for the last 13 years, she has sought all sorts of relief. This has been 3 lawsuits. This has been 2 Article 78s, 3 if you count this one. It has been more than 50 Freedom of Information Law requests. In the state of New York, it's called FOIL, Freedom of Information Law. And so all of the administrative stuff still hasn't ended. And in order to start that statute of limitations anyway, all of the requests for administrative relief have to have been exhausted. But that really isn't the point either. What we did is we presented them with new evidence. We didn't just write a letter. We presented them with new evidence. Now let's go, and so that should start the clock, the 4-month statute of limitations. Once we found that evidence, we promptly gave them that evidence, and they decided to ignore it. And this is exactly what an Article 78 lawsuit is about, compelling government in the state of New York to act rather than ignore. They never once gave notice that there was a determination that was final and binding. That never once happened. Now, let's talk about binding, because in the state of New York, especially, and any state in the union for that matter, the finding of a cause of death and a manner of death is never final nor binding. These things are changed all the time. In fact, when you go to the state of New York, there is a process that you can follow to make amendments and corrections to death records. Specifically, if we just kind of scroll down in here, let me show you what could happen. I think it is correct the cause of death right here. Any one of these documents stated, signed by attending physician, medically licensed coroner, or medical examiner, specifying the correct cause of death and where it should be added to the certificate, or a court order specifying the correct cause of death and where it should be added to the certificate. So at any time, guys, at any time, a medical examiner or a court can change a cause of death. Therefore, it is never final. Does that make sense? So this begs, for me, it begs the question. In this case, okay, this is a case from 2009 where the family of the victim has worked tirelessly, guys, along with other people that have been helping them, in order to make this injustice right. And this is a weird case for the true crime genre, because it isn't a whodunit, right? We actually have evidence about who was in the room. There's DNA there, and there's like a mountain of circumstantial evidence. There are witnesses. There's tons of evidence. We know what happened to Amanda Wienckowski. We know that she was murdered by Antoine Garner at 157 Spring, and then she was by manual strangulation and with a stun gun, and that she was then discarded in the trash and hidden for 35 days until they finally put the trash can where they were, I don't know, they were hoping it would get picked up and her body would be taken to the dump or something. I'm not quite sure, but we know who did it, how they did it, when they did it. But because the Erie County Medical Examiner's Office is digging in their heels and saying, no, this is an accident, the Buffalo Police Department will not continue the investigation. Now, I should, in fairness, say, because we have so many documents in this case, we have 1,800 pages of documents. There were some detectives at the police department at Buffalo PD who continued to do their investigation at least until 2015, which is when Leslie sued and got the records. So there were some people investigating it, but they couldn't do a complete on the books with a budget investigation into her death because the prosecutor at the time, district attorney was Frank Sedita, and he at the time was saying, I'm not going to prosecute this. There's nothing, I can't win this case. I like to call him Softball Sedita. I did not make that one up. I have heard that one, but he did not want to prosecute cases that he couldn't win. Now, when we sent that information going back to a few minutes ago, and I said we sent the evidence to the medical examiner's office and the county attorney, we had also given it prior to the district attorney's office. Now, the district attorney now is a man named John Flynn. He had when he was asked about this, by a reporter in Buffalo, he had something to say about it. I want to play this for you. Here you go.
When asked about the recent lawsuit that doesn't involve his office to amend her death certificate, he said,
there is evidence to show that the first autopsy is not entirely correct.
He said that on September 3rd. That was so just a little bit over a month ago. It blew me away the moment that he said that, because that is the very first time that anyone in government in Erie County, New York has admitted that there is a problem with the autopsy report. And that, okay, getting back to my questions, why is Erie County, the medical examiner's office, fighting this anyway? If there is evidence and the district attorney saying, yeah, I looked at it, there's a problem with the first autopsy, but Erie County is saying, no, we're digging in. This was an accident. We're not going to change anything, nothing to see here. Why are they doing that? Is it because there's something to hide? Was there something that they don't want anybody to know about that was going on in the medical examiner's office at the time? Were they messing up on other cases? If this autopsy report were to be overturned and the cause and manner of death was set to homicide and manual strangulation, would that mean that there would be an avalanche of other cases that they messed up on that would also have to defend, and maybe there would be people who are in jail or in prison now that would have to be let out? I honestly don't know. I, in my heart, think that they are hiding a lot. I think that there is a lot to lose in just this one case that is so obvious. They still don't want to change it. So Leslie's attorney in the next couple of days will be responding to this motion to dismiss, and I think he will be able to tear it apart, and we will be able to see arguments in a hearing in this case soon. So that is the update on the case of Amanda Wienckowski. I really appreciate sticking around to the end. If you are not a subscriber and you like this kind of content, you think I deserve it, please subscribe. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you didn't like the video, please give it a thumbs down so I know what kind of content you guys like. With that, I shall bid you adieu, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe to my channel. And if you have any comments or questions, please leave them below.